This week, I needed to try some things a little bit more lighter, more relaxing. Last week, I read Spare by Prince Harry and I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Both of those were just really, really heavy, and I have to be careful to protect my energy, make sure that I'm not just reading a whole bunch of books in a row that are going to drag me down. So I decided to make sure that I went lighter this week. So the first book that I read was Witchful Thinking by Celeste Martin, and this book just really brought me in immediately. It is set in the town of Freya Grove. It's right on the coast. I'm not sure if it says exactly. I imagine it kind of the East Coast, but it deals with a town filled with a whole bunch of people with different magical kind of supernatural abilities. So Lucy, the main character, is a witch, and the other, like the love interest in the book, is a merman, Alex, and they were friends in high school and have not seen each other in 10 years, and 10 years is coming up. It is their high school reunion. Alex is in town for different reasons, but Lucy's kind of experiencing just kind of that sense of, oh, I'm not really sure if this is what my life was supposed to be, and so she's second guessing some of the choices that she's made over the last 10 years. Either way, this is their first time seeing each other since prom night, and they are just immediately back in step with the people that they were 10 years ago in terms of their relationship, the way they feel about each other. There's a lot of chemistry between them. It's clear that they very, very much care for each other, and I liked the setting of, this community where everyone is a little special in their own way. There's, garden gnomes that are a little troublesome. I wish that Celeste Martin would have expanded on that more. I think that she created this really great town and then didn't really do a whole lot with it. Additionally, this book was certainly the palate cleanser of all of the drama that I was reading about last week, in that kind of nothing happens. It's very low conflict. It's not very intense. Probably about like 3/4 of the way through, I was like, there's really not much left to happen in this book, which is disappointing because I feel as though there were some good other subplots happening. There's, another couple that is certainly kind of interested in each other. There's a wedding going on, that there's drama with that. And there's also kind of this wish that Lucy makes at the beginning of the book that is unclear to me. What did it go wrong? Is this the wish that she intended it to be? Or is this just kind of exactly playing out right? So some of the magic isn't really fully given depth and explored the way that I would have liked to see it occur. And, I think that I'm excited about the possibility of future books in this series. I think that the author has done a really nice job creating the basis for what could be other stories, but the story between Lucy and Alex just kind of fell a little bit flat for me, in that it's not that I want, contrived problems between love interests, but it just kind of felt like there really wasn't anything special to tell. Like, they just met each other again after 10 years, and they both know that they want to be together, and it's just some kind of mundane things keeping them apart. That said, I did appreciate having a book that just was so low-key after last week's reading. That was just really intense. I don't normally read books before bed because I tend to stay awake reading them and I stay up too late. But this was actually one of the rare exceptions that I've made, in that I read this book most nights before bed, and just like a chapter or two, and I was kind of fallen asleep and ready to go to bed. So I think you should read this book too if you just need something that it's like a Hallmark movie. You know how it's gonna end. The writing is good. You're nothing that you're necessarily going to remember excitedly months later, but I think that it could be just a really great choice if you were like me, needing something a little bit more relaxing. All right, so that is my thoughts on wishful thinking. So the next book that I read this week was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and what I was really looking forward to in reading this book is that it's set in the same world as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. If you watched my 2022 yearly review, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was one of my top books of the year, so I was really excited and to go back to that same world and just that kind of comfort level of reading another book not with the same characters, but in the same setting with the similar writing style. I listened to the audio version, and one of the narrators is one of the same narrators who read for Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So it's also just kind of nice. It almost felt like picking up the book again and just learning about different characters. Like with Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, it took me a while to get into it. When I read Seven Husbands, I put it down and came back to it months later. With Malibu Rising, because I knew to expect that it might take time for the story to build, I stuck with it, and I'm really glad that I did. A couple hours into listening, I was fully hooked. This is a story about 4 siblings and kind of all converging on a party one night at the eldest sister's house, and just the background, the history of all of the different paths that have taken them to this one night and how things will change from them and kind of be a pivotal point going forwards. With Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I was really able to become attached to Evelyn Hugo because the book is all about her. Of course, you learn about her 7 husbands, you learn about other close people in her life, but the story really centers around her. Because this book, Malibu Rising, had 4 main characters, and then also Taylor Jenkins Reid pulls in and creates 2 new characters that are only there for 2 paragraphs and just kind of talking about what's happening for them at this party. It was a little bit harder to find that kind of depth and attachment that I had with Evelyn Hugo. Evelyn Hugo as a character, I feel personally invested in. I'm not sure I could really say that for any of the people in Malibu Rising, but I did at the same time want to know what happened. It was a very compelling story of these 4 kids with a famous father who's not present, and they're trying to kind of make their own paths in the world, kind of both in his shadow, but also in the shadow of each other as well. So I really loved it. I thought it was very well done. And I think that you should certainly read this too if you have read other books by Taylor Jenkins Reid and liked them. And I think in a lot of ways it's kind of a good coming of age story. The oldest sibling in the book, I think she's 23 when the events of the book are taking place. So everyone's still rather young. They have a lot left to live in their life, but they've already gone through so much. And I also really appreciated the relationships that they had as siblings. It's certainly that closeness, that bond that I would like for my own children, and I thought that was very sweet as well. So the last book that I read this week was Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett. Now, first of all, it is not an encyclopedia of fairies. It is actually a journal, it's a fictional journal, set in the winter of, I think, 1905, 1906, of a woman who works in Cambridge in their department of people who study fairies. Now, not fairies as a folklore, but fairies as real, actual creatures. And she is probably the world's top expert in this book. And she is writing an encyclopedia, but you are reading excerpts of her journal as she goes on an expedition to a fictional country where she is looking at the types of fairies that exist there, and she's really trying to break open a new case and be able to explore something else. So once she gets there, she gets a letter from her colleague back at Cambridge, and he says that he's going to come too and to expect him to arrive in a couple of weeks. And she has mixed feelings about this because her coworker is not as good as she is, but he tends to get a lot more attention, a lot more fame, and so she has mixed feelings. She does refer to him as her only friend, but you can certainly sense that at times she's a little bit resentful of him. So he shows up and ends up kind of crashing in the same cabin as her. He brings along some graduate students with him, and from there the story really begins to unfold. What I loved about this story is it was so multi-layered. Heather Fawcett really creates a very deep world of different types of fairies. There's kind of stories within stories as Emily Wilde is writing about folklore that she's heard about fairies that now she's applying to her expedition. And I just thought that there was so much work put into this story. And then there's lots of different plot lines happening. Emily Wilde is trying to, figure out how to help different people people while also trying to do her research, while also dealing with her coworker who's just kind of shown up uninvited. And it really sucked me in and just held my attention. I finished it probably in about a day. It was really good. There was one part of the book that I had to kind of put the book down for a little bit and think on it. There's a story of a changeling, which if you're not familiar with the mythology behind that, the idea in kind of past history was if you had a baby and the baby was sick, that maybe it wasn't really your baby. Maybe the baby was a fairy baby that had been swapped with your baby. And if you could take good care of it, eventually the fairies would give you your own baby back. So in this novel, there's a subplot of a family who has a changeling. And while Emily Wilde is engaging with this baby, or this young child at this point, she, kind of pokes them with an iron nail and is just a little bit aggressive with them. And as a parent, I just kind of felt like, oh, this is still a child. So it was a little upsetting to me. I had to put the book down, but I came back to it, and the storyline with the changeling ended up being fine. But overall, like, I just really, really appreciated that the author, Heather Fawcett, is trying out all of these different subplots. Now, if you're expecting this book to come to a full final conclusion, you're not going to get that. It appears to be the first in a series, but I'm really, really excited to read what comes next. And I think that she has established a really fantastic world. I would say you should read this too if you like books that are a little bit supernatural. If you are a fan of, ACOTAR, if you have read Outlander or A Discovery of Witches, kind of all of those series, kind of there's similar tones in this that I thought were really great. And I'm really excited to see what's next in the story for Emily and Wendell.